Go, Vince.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of In the Blue Corner. This is Vince Loccisano and accompanied yet again by Chris Beach this week. Steve Katib is in week 2 of his holidays, so we hope he's having a great time wherever he is. And Chris, thanks very much again for being so generous with your time again tonight for us.
No problem at all, Vince. I had a little mini holiday myself up in the Harbour City, which I've only just come back from today. So,
wow.
This was a
what were you up in Sydney for, Beachy?
It's sort of a little weekend away, just partly with work, partly not with work. It was to play some round football games, actually. So 2 games a year I play, and it's with some boys I know from work.
Yep.
And it just happened. We haven't done it the last couple of years due to COVID, but it was Sydney's turn, and I went up for the weekend.
Very good. I can't remember the last time I played a football game. many years ago. Let's just say I'm in my mid-50s, and those days are long gone.
All good, mate. All good.
Well, thanks again, Chris. Much appreciated. And, well, of course, we've had another round of finals this week, which we'll be talking about very shortly, with the 2 semi-finals having been played and won and lost by the 4 teams. And we'll go over those results and some of the more, I guess, detailed elements of each game. And, of course, we'll also touch on VFL and also the AFLW competition, of which Carlton is a member of, naturally, and they played in a very interesting game at Icon Park this afternoon. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. Of course, this is a Carlton-centric show, so all of you blue baggers out there, if you've got anything to say, you'd like to join us at some stage, either raise a topic or make a comment on anything that we're discussing, or if you'd like to ask a question, by all means do so. We welcome your participation. Just go to our Facebook page, In the Blue Corner, and you can leave your comments or questions there, and we'll certainly put them up on screen, certainly if they're relevant. Let's keep our language respectful, though, shall we? And also, of course, our YouTube channel of the same name, In the Blue Corner, if you'd like to visit that as well. All right, Beachy, let's get straight into it, shall we? Friday night was the big semi-final between Melbourne and the Brisbane Lions, and the Demons, after being, well, world beaters last year, having won the premiership, limped into second position. I thought it was a little bit lucky that they ended up finishing second, to be honest, because they effectively only won 6 and lost 6 of their last 12 matches of the season. But courtesy of their first 10 matches, where they won all of them, it was enough to get them second spot on the ladder. But it was no problem for the Sydney Swans to travel down to Melbourne last week and beat them on Melbourne's home ground. And it certainly appeared to be the case again this week with the Brisbane Lions, who only just knocked off Richmond the week before and came down and put Melbourne to the sword as well. So out in straight sets for the Demons. Who would have thought that halfway through the season?
Certainly not me, Vince. I will tell you that right now. No, I was actually in the air when this game was taking place, on my way to Sydney at this point. But from what I understand and from what I believe, the standout player there for pretty much the entire game was, you guessed it, Lockie Neal. He absolutely destroyed the Melbourne Demons himself. He got his teammates involved. He might not have kicked a goal or anything, but he was damaging with the football when he had it in his hand.
Yep. Well, that's true. He did have a very good game. I don't think he had to do it alone. This time he had plenty of mates. No. I think guys like McCluggage and Rich and guys like that certainly played their part. Jared Berry as well, who interestingly has been given a 1-match ban if he wants to accept that after his little eye gouging incident with Clayton Oliver. So it'll be interesting to see whether the Brisbane Lions decide to challenge that. I think that they should, personally. When a player's down, on his back, and a player has basically jumped on him and put his forearm across his throat, he's to a large extent defenceless. And I don't think it was. What he did in trying to defend himself. I don't think that warranted a one-match suspension. Personally, I think that they should challenge that.
Well, Vince, I can tell you.
If it was a Carlton player in a Carlton final, I reckon we'd be challenging it all day long. Put it that way.
Well, fair enough. And I can tell you right now, as of 12 minutes ago on the AFL app, the Brisbane Lions are challenging the Jared Berry ban.
I wasn't aware of that, so thanks for letting us know. Yeah, that's great.
As of
always knew I could count on you to bring me the latest news. Beachy, I'd keep saying, Sam McClure, eat your heart out. We've got our own, eyes and ears on the ground here.
Look, I just do my best to keep trying. I just try my best to keep up to date. So there are sometimes where I just think, why do I even bother? But anyway, look, that's different altogether.
Yep.
At the moment, as I can tell you, Lions will challenge the ban. We should be expecting to hear something maybe later this week, but we'll find out more detail as they come to hand.
Yep, I think he should be let off for that. Maybe a fine, but certainly not a suspension. Not for something like that. Goodness me, in the finals. If he really wanted to eye gouge him, he had every opportunity to really do it properly, and I don't think he went anything close to doing it in the manner in which you'd think. But anyway, getting back to the game, we should just reiterate the scores. The final score: Melbourne 11 goals, 13-79 to Brisbane 14 goals, 8-92, and really it was a tale of two halves. When you look at the first half, Melbourne kicked 3-6 in the first quarter and 3 goals, 2 in the second quarter, so 3 goals in each of the first two. Brisbane kicked 1 goal, 3, and a further 2 goals, 1. So Melbourne went in basically double their score, 6-8-44 to 3-4-22 at halftime, and looked all over the winners. Mind you, Brisbane kicked the last goal of that second quarter, and I thought that was quite telling. It was within 30 seconds of halftime, and it just brought the margin back to that sort of gettable margin rather than looking like 5 goals. It was actually 28 points at one stage. Brisbane kicked the last goal to bring it back to 22 points. So I thought that was an important final goal of the first half. And then in the third quarter, didn't they come out and show what they're made of? And basically both teams went in even at three-quarter time, 8-11-59. Melbourne, inaccurate kicking, yet again being very costly. I thought the first half, if they had a kick really straight, they could have been 40, 45 points in front at halftime, to be honest. Just goes to show you that bad kicking for goal is the worst thing about, is probably the worst skill error you can commit as a team. And Brisbane, very accurate kicking, 9 goals, 5-59 as well at three-quarter time. So that set it up for a ring-a-ding-ding last quarter. But as we know this year, unlike last year, Melbourne's last quarters have been abysmal. And Brisbane put them to the sword. They kicked 5 goals, 3 to 3 goals, 2 in the last quarter and ran away with it. So, all hats off to Brisbane. Kudos to them and their coach, Chris Fagan. He's had a lot of pressure on him for being the coach of a side that just doesn't perform in finals. But this year so far, they've won 2 of them. I think he can look forward to a contract extension no matter what happens this week.
Absolutely. And good evening,
good to see
Rash.
Richard. Rash Hussain. Good to see you, Rash, all the way over from Dubai, the sand pit, as we call it.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess you would have been pretty nervous as a Melbourne supporter at three-quarter time at the scores level because they just have not been finishing off games at all this year. About the only game that they managed to do something in was the one against Carlton in the second last round of the year where they came back from the dead and somehow pulled off a last-minute win.
Yeah, but then again...
As a matter of fact, not only last minute, I think 12 seconds to go when Cozzy Pickett kicked that last goal. Why is it always us, Beachy?
Right.
In fact, this game was between two teams that we lost to in the third last round and the second last round. So it's hardly surprising that Brisbane beat them, seeing Brisbane beat us so comprehensively, and Melbourne struggled to get the better of us.
No, exactly. But, you mentioned Melbourne being, Melbourne supporters being nervous about the last quarter. On the other side of the coin, you have to consider the nerves of the Brisbane Lions fans because they
hadn't won. They hadn't won at the MCG since 2014, Beachy.
That's it. And I was just going to say that they hadn't won at the MCG for a number of years. They've been beaten there time after time after time, and now they've finally got the monkey off their back. And now they'll have a chance to try and back it up next week against the Cats.
Yeah. Well, don't forget the last 4 meetings between them, Melbourne have absolutely caned them every time. And on this occasion, you would have been heartened, I think, as a Brisbane Lions supporter, thinking, well, hang on, we may not have won here since 2014, but Melbourne's absolutely smashed us in the last 4 times they've played us. And here we are, the scores are level at three-quarter time. We're playing a far better brand of football, and it seems to be standing up against whatever they can dish up. So I reckon I'd have been pretty positive and pretty optimistic going into that last quarter if I was a Brisbane Lions supporter. I mean, before the game, you would have been forgiven for being a bit apprehensive, seeing they lost Joe Danaher because he had to fly up to Brisbane to be with his partner. Apparently, their first child was being born, and apparently his partner was in labour. So they lost Joe Danaher before the game, and I think a lot of people thought, oh, well, there goes Brisbane's chances. But no, as a matter of fact, with Danaher missing and also their number one ruckman, Oscar McInerney, they did really well, I thought, and the replacements for those two players performed admirably on the night.
And I'm just reading the commentary back from this game as well. It said Lions recorded a season-high pressure rating of 201. Now, if we've had a look at that when they put that graph up during the game, about 190 plus means you're in an elite pressure. So that was...
Oh, they certainly turned up the pressure meter in the second half. And Melbourne didn't know how to handle it. They just kept turning the ball over. And Brisbane found a way to get around Lever and May, who are the two, linchpins of their defence. And they found a way around them. And in the end, it was a mistake by Lever in the last minute that killed off the game, where he not only lost the free kick, but then failed to give the ball back in time. And the umpire said, righto, 50 metres. And that just made it a certainty. And that was game over as soon as that happened. Yep,
agree. That's what you call a coach killer in the trade. That's complete coach killer.
Well, I guess Simon Goodwin's lucky that he won the premiership last year, so he's got at least another couple of years, you would think, where he's probably going to be safe. But I think what the match did highlight is that Melbourne are no longer that, dominant team that really came home like a steam train in games last year. In fact, quite the opposite this year. They've been lacking in the second halves, and especially their last quarters. And I think it also highlighted more than anything the deficiency in their attack. Yet again, their key position players in the forward line just don't seem to stand up when it counts the most. And I thought Ben Brown and, in the end, I think they had Ben Brown playing full forward and probably Bailey Fritsch playing centre-half forward, where he really is more of a half-forward flanker. They ended up having to put Harrison Petty down there in the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game just to try and get something happening up forward. That was a desperate move right at the end. But, I mean, funnily enough, he actually took a couple of nice marks and kicked a nice goal at one stage. But, it just goes to show you that they have got a really serious problem up forward. And without Tom McDonald up there, I think they're going to need to recruit. And Sam Wiedemann's not the answer. And Mitch Brown, their former Essendon player, he's also in the reserves. He's playing for the Casey Demons at the moment, who are going to be playing off in the grand final in the VFL next week. So,
Yes.
I think they've got a real issue, Melbourne.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm not going to say the Demons are complete shell themselves in terms of last year. I mean, they were still up there all year, although in most cases now, when you've won one premiership, of course you're going to try and go back to back, but it's very hard to do. So
I think Simon Goodwin summed up something pretty well in his press conference where he said, if you've got deficiencies, you usually have them showing up in finals. And I think they were exposed in the end. That's why they went out in straight sets. Both the Sydney Swans and the Brisbane Lions exposed them for their major deficiencies. They worked them out. And the crazy thing is Melbourne got off to really good starts in both of those games. And in neither game were they able to hold on. They just could not defend the lead that they'd built up. Mind you, as I said earlier, there could have been even greater leads if it wasn't for their inaccuracies. But, yeah, I guess they're going to need to work on that and start trading players and maybe even making some hard decisions on a few players that aren't quite up to the level.
Yep.
Anyway.
That's pretty good, Vince. I mean,
but on the winners' side of things, without sort of concentrating too much on Melbourne, I thought Brisbane were fabulous, and their team spirit was really evident on Saturday night. They really dug deep and came back hard at Melbourne, and eventually wore them down. And once they took the lead, they never looked like giving it up.
No, that's right.
In fact, if you look at it, from halftime onwards, there's just a gradual whittling down of Melbourne's lead between halftime and three-quarter time to the point where it was basically zero at three-quarter time. And that trend continued on into the last quarter. There was only a little bit of a blip of a couple of goals right towards the end when Brisbane had basically put the cue back in the rack. I mean, I think at that stage they were like 25 points up or something in that order. And Melbourne got a couple of goals, and then Brisbane kicked the last one.
Yeah.
Although I think they were 20 points up. Yeah. But basically, if you have a look at the overall trend, the second half was all Brisbane. They kicked 70 points, Beachy. 11 goals for. 70 points in the second half. Now, if you do that in the first half, you've kicked 140 points for the match. Conceding 70 points is a huge achievement for the Brisbane Lions in that second half.
Yep, it is, because in previous years gone by, Vince, sides like Brisbane have struggled to put on decent scores onto the board, giving them no chance to win it at all. But, 14 goals, 92. About 85% of the time, are you going on to win with a score like that? That's just my view.
Well, but again, good kicking too. 14 goals, 8.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, they still had 2 less scoring shots than Melbourne. But Melbourne kicked 11 goals, 13. So, again, that inaccurate kicking in the first half has ended up biting them on the backside in the overall result.
Yeah, and it's come back to bite them hard.
Yeah. Let's go over the best players for each side. Brisbane, I guess they really won it through the middle of the ground. I don't think Melbourne's midfield was dominant at all, to be honest. A lot of their midfielders, like, as I said, McCluggage, Neal, Coleman. I spoke about Coleman last week. He's an important player. Jared Berry, Dane Zorko, Zach Bailey chipped in for a couple of goals. So did Daniel McStay. And, of course, Eric Hipwood proved to be a really important key position player up forward, kicking 4 goals. And I think that was one of the main differences as well, is that Brisbane had a proper structure that worked in the forward line. With Hipwood there and McStay at basically full forward and centre half forward, it really worked.
Yeah, it did. It did. And, Fort,
and of course, Charlie Cameron chipping in for 3 goals. That helped a lot.
And Fort
Kicked
had
a beautiful
29
goal on his left foot around the corner from the forward pocket when the game was in the balance. A massive kick. Fantastic goal.
And
what a player he is.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's Darcy Fort, number 32 for the Brisbane Lions.
Well, he came in basically as a backup ruckman because McInerney was out with concussion.
Yeah, and he had 29 hit-outs against Max Gawn, who, of course, had 36. But, he's almost broken even.
But you'd hardly say that's dominant, is it?
No, that's right.
Is it? Yeah.
That's right. I mean,
and I think Jackson. I think Luke Jackson for Melbourne summed up, in my opinion, their night. Largely ineffective. Only had the 9 hit-outs. He only had the 6 kicks, 3 hand passes. Did not trouble the scorer, and I think he looks like a player who's ready to leave. Yeah, rumours are swirling that he's going to Fremantle, and they're pretty strong rumours too.
I wouldn't be surprised now. I mean, he's from Freo originally. Okay, he's from WA originally, so it wouldn't be a surprise by this point. It's just a question of,
and that's why I think Melbourne already know, and that's why they're already well into Brodie Grundy and looking to do a deal with Collingwood on Brodie Grundy.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we've got a whole trade period that needs to play out, which will start soon, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yep.
As for the Melbourne side of things, you mentioned Luke Jackson, who had his night summed up by his performance.
Yeah.
And we've already mentioned Gawn. You were talking about the midfield. Viney didn't trouble the scorers too much despite getting plenty of the ball. We already touched on Gawn. Oliver didn't trouble the scorers at all despite getting plenty of the ball as well. Bullen kicked a couple, but, from 13 disposals, obviously you could say possibly looking for a bit more out of that. Brayshaw, 18.
I didn't think Neil Bullen was their worst. I think he did his job. That's what he's there for, to kick a couple of goals from the forward, half-forward flank.
Yep, fair enough. Brayshaw, 18.
Brayshaw didn't have as much of it as you would think, but he was, I think, to some extent playing on Lachie Neale.
And that was hard enough for him as it was.
Langdon did well, 24 possessions and a couple of goals. Petrarca, I thought, was very brave, 27 possessions on one leg. I mean, he was clearly favouring that leg that had a fracture in it, as well as having a corky. So, I thought he was pretty brave, Petrarca, to even play the game, let alone play as well as he did. But I think Melbourne's problem mainly. I mean, Pickett did his job, couple of goals. Melksham's the other one that they have up forward that just he kicked 1 goal early, but that's about it. He didn't do much else. Fritsch got a couple. I suppose you'd say that's barely enough for him. They probably need him to be kicking 3 or even 4. But there's a few players that need to pick up their act if they're going to keep their spots in this list. Some of them, absolutely. I mean, even Salem, only 11 possessions for the night. I thought he had a really poor night. Yeah,
and he's usually one of the...
he's normally a ball accumulator. Yeah, possession accumulator. He's normally at least good for 20 to 25.
Yep. He's an absolute speedster.
Anyway, they're done. The Demons, they are done. The last year's premiers, out in straight sets. That's never a good feeling when you work hard all year to get a top 2 position, and then you go out in straight sets. It reminds me of what Carlton did in 1994. You were probably not even alive back then, or you might have been 2. There you go. So, we'd finished in the top 2 that year after finishing in the grand final the previous year and losing. and we went out in straight sets. I remember we finished second on the ladder. We played Melbourne, who was 7th. Back then, it was a different format, Beachy. We had to play 8th, second had to play 7th, third had to play 6th, and fourth had to play 5th. So what happened is the 2 highest ranked winners had the week's rest, and the 2 lowest placed losers were the ones eliminated. So it was a strange format back then. But anyway, we lost the first game to Melbourne, even though they finished 7th. And then the following week we had to play Geelong, and they beat us as well. And it was a very bad feeling, I'll tell you, around the club after having lost both those finals. To come back the following year and win the premiership was what would you call that? Retribution, I suppose. But I think that's what Melbourne needs to do. If this hurts enough, they'll come back hard next year. I'm not sure whether it's going to hurt enough, seeing they won the premiership the year before. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do.
I think the fire in the belly might have gone from a couple of those players, but anyway, we'll see what happens. I think they've also got some issues within the team. There doesn't seem to be quite the same amount of team harmony as there was the year before.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's enough about Melbourne. Brisbane off to play Geelong next week, also at the MCG, also on a Friday night. A vastly different opponent this time around.
Yes, it's a battle of the felines, as I think they're calling it, Vince. So,
well, it's the little cats versus the big cats.
Yep, exactly. So we look forward to that. It should be a beauty of a game to watch. We'll see how it plays out.
Yes, well, Geelong's had a week's rest and had time to observe that final and see how Brisbane plays and see how Melbourne played. And obviously now they're going to focus their attention on Brisbane, so seeing they were the winner. But do you give Brisbane a chance against Geelong next week? Any chance at all?
If they bring the same pressure that they brought to Melbourne, then they have every opportunity to knock Geelong off.
You see, I just don't know whether that game could be described in the same way as the previous finals the previous week. Those finals all were high-pressure matches. That game there didn't tell me... There were lots of passages of play that were just skill errors everywhere. It didn't give me the same feeling that it was... Do you know what I mean? I think when Brisbane turned up the pressure meter in the second half, it did. But the first half didn't feel like a game like that.
Okay.
Didn't feel like a high-pressure game.
That's fair enough. What I was going to say, though, was that, however, what worries me is Geelong have so much class and experience around the ground. They'll know what to do.
Yeah.
So if they get pressured, they'll be very quick in terms of how to get the ball moving, keep it moving. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this game.
Indeed. Yes. Well, we'll get your predictions on that a little bit later in the show. Let's turn our attention now to the other semi-final. Collingwood last night defeating Fremantle by, well, what seems to be a modest win of 20 points, but I think that they were far more dominant than that and, frankly, should have won by a lot more. Interestingly, their score of 11-13-79 was exactly the same as Melbourne's losing score of 11-13-79. The only difference is that Brisbane kicked 92, whereas Fremantle only kicked 59. So a losing score in one semi-final was the winning score in the other.
Yes, exactly.
So that's the final score, 11-13-79 to Fremantle 9-5-59. I think the game was very much won in the first quarter, with Collingwood kicking 4 unanswered goals to Fremantle's solitary point. And then the second quarter, they both kicked 2 goals each. The third quarter, they both kicked 2 goals each. And it was only the last quarter where Freo kicked 5-3 that they pegged the margin back a little bit from sort of I think it got up to around 35 points at one stage. And anyway, they whittled that back to 20 in the end, mainly with late goals. Johnny Yelder. G'day, Johnny. Hello to you too. Feel free to comment on anything. Matt Elman, Swans. Matt thinks that the Swans will win. Well, they got to beat Collingwood yet, Matt, but they certainly have the big advantage of playing at the SCG next Saturday night and also having a week's rest on Collingwood.
Which we'll touch on momentarily.
Yeah. I thought Collingwood, in fact, I think they kicked at one stage, was it 6 goals straight at one stage?
Yes.
I think they kicked 6 goals straight and then all of a sudden racked up the points incredibly to the point where they ended up being 8-12 at three-quarter time. So they went from 6 straight to, after that point, they kicked 2-12. Not great kicking for goal, is it?
No, exactly. But you see, what was impressive was that they were able to keep the pressure on Fremantle for most of that game until the last quarter. Because if you look at the quarter-by-quarter scores for Fremantle here, 0 goals, 1 in the first. Then they kicked 2 goals, 1 in the second. And then they kicked
2 goals, 2 in the third.
And then it was 5 goals, 1 in the last. So
Collingwood in the second and third quarters. Collingwood in the second and third quarters kicked exactly the same score, 2 goals, 6 in each of those quarters. Now, 2-6 and 2-6 ended up being 4 goals, 12 through those middle quarters, whereas really they should have had at least 8 to 10 goals. They missed so many shots. It was incredible watching them miss as much as they did. In fact, I dare say if they do that against Sydney next week, they'll probably pay a heavy price for it.
And it's going to be, it'll be a big one too. It won't be just heavy. It'll be expensive.
Yeah.
Sydney has a lot of quality, and they know exactly what to do on a ground like the SCG.
Yes, my word. Well, it was a gallant Dockers. I guess the odds were against them. They had to travel down here, play in front of 90,000 screaming Magpie fans who are all, making a hell of a lot of noise in favour of their team. Hardly any Fremantle supporters that I could tell, but they had a little cheer squad of sorts. But really, to play in front of 90,000 odd people who are basically all against you was a bit of an ask, wasn't it? From an atmosphere point of view, they would have been a bit overwhelmed by that, I think. And then when Collingwood got off to that start of 4-0, they were barely hanging on. Throughout the whole of the second and third quarters, you just thought at any stage here, Collingwood could just bust this game wide open. Mind you, they never really did.
No, exactly. That said, though, Vince, you were talking about it being 90,000 strong against you. I know I'm a little young for this, but it instantly reminded the days of when someone like us or anybody else had to visit Collingwood's true home ground in Victoria Park.
Yes.
That would have just been a horrible, sinking feeling just listening to that every week. Yep.
It's certainly not a happy hunting ground for most sides, Victoria Park. Anyway, so who did you think were the best players for each side here? Let's start with the winners. Who would you have given your 3-2-1 to?
So I would have given it to, let's see here. I'd have given it to my 3 to Jack Crisp, number 25, 2 goals, 24 disposals, and 5 tackles, 3 marks.
Yep.
Pretty good stats there.
Yep, I agree.
2, I would have probably gone with, and I know he frustrates a lot of people, including myself. I'm putting that
Mm-hmm.
hand up right now. And that
Mm-hmm.
is number 33, Jack Ginnivan. He kicked 3 goals, 1 for the evening with 11 touches. He didn't lay as many tackles as he would have liked, but he was impacting on the scoreboard at any opportunity that he got.
Mm-hmm.
And then for my 1, I'm going to say Jamie Billy Elliott, the player that broke Carlton Hearts in the last round. 2
Yep.
with 15 disposals, 7 tackles, Vince. 7.
Yes, he certainly played a very good game and was a live wire up forward. I didn't quite go with those players. I take your point about Ginnivan and Elliott. They were probably more impact players rather than 4-quarter players. So they when they did come into the game, they certainly had a large impact, a lot of score involvements, I imagine. But I agree with you on your best player. I thought Jack Crisp was an amazing player that on Saturday night. Fantastic overall team performance, unbelievable. 24 possessions, but also laid 5 tackles and kicked 2 goals. I didn't think that there was a better 4-quarter player than him. So I thought he was clearly the best man on the ground. My second best on the ground, I gave to Jordan De Goey. I thought he played a really good game. One of the best I've seen him play, and a really good team game as well. He really brought others into the play, and hats off to him. He actually played a really impactful game. 24 possessions, laid 4 tackles, kicked a goal. I thought he was instrumental in Collingwood's win. And I gave my third vote to Elliott, the same player that you did, Jamie Elliott. So, again, 2 goals, 15 possessions, 7 tackles. He's a great player on the night. I thought those were the 3 best players for me. And, yeah, I'll take your point about Ginnivan kicking 3 goals. More of a goal sneak type player. But, yeah, he was certainly in my top 5 as well. Johnny's saying, spot on, Vince. We're waiting for the Pies to blow them away. Talk about blow who away? Swans, or I thought Johnny was saying the Swans were going to win, wasn't
I think you're
or was he
thinking
somebody
about
else?
Matt Allman said.
Oh, sorry, I got them mixed up, have I?
That's all right. And then he's followed up with Jordan was my favourite. He can really
change the game. Oh, right. So he's agreeing with me on that. Yeah.
Yep, that's
so I don't look. Believe me, it gives me no joy to be talking about how good Collingwood are.
Yeah, I know.
In fact, I think a lot of Carlton people would have looked at the TV last night, barracking for Fremantle in the hope that they could sink Collingwood, because we would have enjoyed them going out in straight sets like Melbourne. In fact, if we had a choice, we'd much rather Collingwood go out in straight sets than Melbourne.
Yes,
As it turns out, Collingwood have at least redeemed themselves. And I didn't think that they were. I mean, last week could have gone either way. It was just a goal in the end that won the game for Geelong. But I thought Collingwood took it up to Geelong in a way that no other side's really taken it up to them this year. Well, certainly not since 4 months ago or whatever it's been since they last lost a game. So I thought they, with a bit of luck, they might have even knocked off Geelong last week. It could have very well end up that Collingwood and Geelong play off in the grand final if Collingwood can do the job on Sydney next week. And they do tend to travel interstate pretty well, I think, when they play interstate.
They do.
So
very strong support.
What about the Fremantle players, Beachy? We saw the final game of a real stalwart of the game and stalwart of the club, I suppose, in David Mundy. Got chaired off the ground, got 18 possessions, kicked a goal, which would have been nice for him in his final game. But who did you think was the best 3 players for Freo?
Well, before we get into that, Johnny's just saying he agrees with you all the way, and then Rash has chimed in and says, "I hate to say it, the Maggies are the most exciting team to watch."
The Pies, are the most exciting team to watch. Yeah, look, you can't ignore the facts, can you, Rash? As much as you'd like to deny it all,
No, exactly.
They are a pretty exciting team to watch at the moment. Their brand of football stands up against anybody, and you got to take your hat off to Craig McRae. I think he'd have to be getting Coach of the Year honours at the moment to get it aside from being second last on the ladder last year, looking like a rudderless ship, to all of a sudden being a top 4 team. So they may even make a grand final. You never know.
Mate, in terms of Coach of the Year, I'm just going to say this now. McRae has it sewn up. As much as I want Voss to take it out, McRae has it sewn up.
Nah, Voss can't. Voss can't be given Coach of the Year for taking a team from, what is it, 14th on the ladder to 9th. That's just not going to do it. It's not going to do it. And 8 wins to 12 and missing out on the top 8, you're never going to get Coach of the Year missing out on finals.
I know, but that's the pro cult supporter in me.
What
I'm saying, though, is McRae has it sewn up and there's no one close. There's no one close.
You could argue that both Chris Scott and John Longmire have done amazing things with their 2 teams this year in getting, Geelong. Well, I think Chris Scott could be given that title if they win the premiership. He would have to win the premiership for him to get that title. Longmire, probably the same, but even just to make a grand final would be an enormous step up from what they did last year, which is make the finals last year, but they went out in the first game against GWS in the first elimination final. So he's done really well to get Sydney into a top 4 position. But yeah, I think even if Collingwood loses on the weekend, you could just about give it to Craig McRae straight away.
Yep.
All right, let's go over those best 3 players for Freo quickly.
Yep.
I'll go first this time, if you like.
Yep. No problem. Go for it.
It's the usual suspects when it comes to Fremantle, and it's Andrew Brayshaw, number 8, who I think is going to win the Brownlow medal.
Yep.
As much as I'd love Patrick Cripps to win it, I just think Brayshaw has been a better player across the season. Sarong, he's another one. What a classy player this guy is. He's like the next Lockie Neal, really, who of course used to play for Fremantle before he went to Brisbane. So,
yes,
Sarong and Brayshaw make a fantastic midfield duo. Blake Acres, I tell you what, if Carlton gets this guy, we will have absolutely pulled off the recruiting move of the season already. Because I really got a lot of time for this guy. 27 possessions, 9 marks. He's got a huge engine for a player that plays on the wing. He could be the answer to our wing issue, at least on one wing.
Yep. It's just
so that's if the rumours are true that he might be coming across to Melbourne and the Carlton are into him. Well, I think we've identified a really good one if we can get him. Tell you what, Carlton wouldn't be the favourite club of any Fremantle supporter, would we? We've got Chera one year, and maybe Acres the next.
And let's not forget the recent times when we've knocked them off as well, not just in Perth, but in Melbourne as well. So Melbourne, Freo will be hating us not quite as badly as West Coast, but getting pretty close.
Well, I thought Brayshaw was the best player for them. 3 votes from me. Not only did he get 32 possessions, and of course most of them being kicks, 17 kicks, 15 hand passes, he also laid 8 tackles. That got him just ahead of Sarong to me, who even though he got 2 more kicks, 19 kicks and 15 hand passes, laid 4 tackles. So I thought Brayshaw just ahead of Sarong, but you could have raffled it between the two. And I thought Acres was brilliant with 27 possessions, 9 marks and 3 tackles. And a big mention to another young player who impressed me, Hayden Young, number 26, 21 possessions, 11 marks. He played a really good game, I thought. And also very solid down back was Luke Ryan with 20 kicks, 23 possessions overall and 6 marks as well. So I thought he battled hard all night as well. So they were the best players for me. I think Fremantle's also got a bit of a similar problem to Melbourne when it comes to kicking goals. I just don't think that they kick enough goals. They need to find some players that can take marks and kick goals. I mean, they relied a lot on Rory Lobb, who is also rumoured to be leaving Fremantle. What is it about these clubs that can't seem to hold on to their best players? But Lobb was another player who disappointed a bit last night, I thought. Only 12 possessions, had 2 points. A couple of those shots were just pretty easy shots he should have gotten. But, I mean, what does Fremantle do about key position forwards? They just can't seem to keep a centre-half forward and a full forward, or even find one, recruit one. Can they? No, I think they've got a similar problem. I think they've got a similar problem to Melbourne. I noticed Taberner didn't play.
Yeah,
he's very inconsistent. He can kick you 7 goals one week and go totally missing the next.
Yeah, he didn't. And you can rely on Walters if you want, but
Walters is a goal sneak. He's like a Charlie Cameron. I mean, you can't rely on these guys to take marks and kick you important goals the way key position forwards ought to.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I was going to say you can rely on Walters if you want, but he's not kicking you goals every week.
No,
he's not kicking you goals. He's not kicking you goals every week. Neither are who else? Schultz, even though he kicked 2.
Well, when you look at it, you had Logue there. Logue is probably the closest thing to a key position player they had doing anything on the night, and he kicked 2 goals. You had Frederick, who's a live wire forward. He kicked 2 goals. Schultz kicked 2 goals. He's a smaller player. Walters kicked 2 goals. That's fine, but that only adds up to 8 goals.
Exactly.
And then, unless your midfielders are chipping in, all of a sudden you've only kicked 9 goals for the game. And you're not going to win too many finals kicking 9 goals.
No, you're not. You're definitely going to be winning more finals if you kick 10 plus.
Yeah.
In this instance, this is what Collingwood did. So here we are. Now, as for my 3 players that stood out for Fremantle, I agree with you on the first 2. That's easy. That's no problem whatsoever.
Brayshaw and Sarong?
Yeah, you said it yourself. You could raffle it off between the 2. The only reason why it's Brayshaw 3 and Sarong 2, you just said it. The tackles. Brayshaw had double the tackles, whereas Sarong had 4 tackles.
Yeah.
And you know what? Yeah, I'll agree with you on Akers as well. But I want to give a special mention to Sean Darcy. 40 hitouts in a losing effort in a final where he's probably not quite up to that experienced level yet, but 40 hitouts is definitely making a statement in a losing effort like that.
Well, put it this way: if you're Brayshaw and Sarong and guys like that, you're really appreciating the service you're getting via Sean Darcy's tap outs. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, he's a very good ruckman, and they're very lucky to have him. I'd like to see him probably do a bit more around the ground in terms of taking marks and maybe even pitching in for the odd goal. But then again, if he's doing his job as a ruckman in getting those tap outs, he's doing probably 85% of what he's there for. Let's get on to the predictions for next week, Beachy. You've got Friday night where Geelong are playing Brisbane at 7:50 p.m. at the MCG. And that's, of course, the first preliminary final. And the second preliminary final is on Saturday afternoon in a twilight time slot of 4:45 p.m. in Sydney. Sydney Swans versus Collingwood. So it'll be largely a game played under lights, but I think that this is being done so that Collingwood, should they win, will be able to fly back to Melbourne on Saturday night and get back to their own beds in time to before the night's out. If that was a night game, like a 7:20 start, they wouldn't be able to get to the airport in time to get back to Melbourne. And I think the AFL wants every team to have the full 7-day break before the grand final.
And that's a fair call, Vince. Although I probably would have looked for a traditional time slot of sometime earlier in the afternoon at about maybe 2 o'clock. But
2:10
again, Vince, the traditional AFL supporter in me, who's grown up with the 10 so as a kid, or in the later days now in the 1:45. I would have thought that was a better way to do it in the event.
I think this sort of half satisfies the people and half satisfies the TV networks, because they like to go through to prime time. You see, that match won't finish until around about 7:30 p.m. Notice how they made it 4:45, not 4:30 or 4:35. It's another 15 minutes. And that'll take it all the way till 7:30. And therefore, the traditional news and current affairs time slots around 6:30, 7, it'll go well into that sort of prime time hour.
Yeah,
that's part of the reason why I think that they've given it that starting time of 4:45 p.m. Anyway, what do you like, or who do you like for each of these two games? Give me a prediction of which team and by how much.
Okay, so starting with Friday night, I am thinking it is going to be Geelong, but I don't think it's going to be easy for them. The Lions will have their tails up. They will be confident now that they've had that win in nearly under a decade at the MCG. However, I just feel like the class and experience of Geelong will just prove to be too much for the Brisbane Lions. In terms of a margin, I am thinking that this is probably an 18-point victory. I don't see it being a blowout.
Interesting. Well, I hope for the sake of the game and for the sake of the supporters of each team and for anyone who's watching it, I hope it is a good, close game and that we have as good a game as we've had in the first 6 finals, because I think we've been blessed with 6 absolutely fantastic finals so far.
Yes, we have.
Very high standard, and not one game you would say has been a blowout or a boring game or anything like that.
No, exactly.
Probably the one that threatened to be that way was the Fremantle Bulldogs game at the first quarter, first quarter and a half. But as we know, the Dockers came right back and made it a fantastic victory in the end. Look, I'm going to disagree this time, as much as I'd love to see a close game. I think Geelong will probably display its superiority. Its high-pressure game will come to the fore, and the fact they've had a week's rest will probably help them a lot. I hope I'm wrong in all of this, but I'm just using my head here rather than my heart. My heart says I hope Brisbane knock them off by a point. But my head is telling me I think Geelong will cruise to a pretty comfortable 44-point victory.
Oh,
okay.
That'll be a long flight back if that's the case, Vince.
Yeah, I think Brisbane's probably fired as many shots as they're going to fire in this final series. I'd love to see them make the grand final. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to see them make the grand final. But because I really admire Chris Fagan and what he's done. I just don't think they'll have the weapons to beat Geelong. And in the other game, Sydney Swans versus Collingwood. Oh dear! Again, my heart is telling me, please, Sydney, beat them. And it will be a lot easier for them playing on their home ground because they'll have the home crowd to support them. But never estimate Collingwood. They always get a big crowd, doesn't matter where they play. And in fact, they make a lot of noise every time they play interstate. And going interstate does not frighten them. It never has. So my head is actually telling me that Collingwood will win. It really is. It's telling me that last week's Geelong-Collingwood game was a dress rehearsal for the grand final. But I'm hoping that Sydney knocks them off. So I'm hoping for another 1 point win, like the famous Sydney Swans win by a point over Essendon in 1996, where they won by a point where Tony Lockett kicked it after the siren when the scores were level. And all he had to do was make the distance and make sure it got at least a point. And he did. He kicked a point, and that won the game. And they played the 1996 grand final as a result, which they lost, by the way. But anyway, I'm hoping that it's a similar result where Sydney wins by a point. But my prediction is that Collingwood will hit back and they will win by... They've been in a lot of close ones this year, haven't they?
They have. I've lost count. Seriously, I've lost count.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm going to say Collingwood by 11 points. There you go.
All right, and before I...
Johnny Redmond. G'day, Johnny. Hi, Vince. Love your new Carlton cap. Yes, I did. I bought that the other day. When I saw Johnny and we went into the Carlton merchandise shop. We went into Icon Park to have a look at the new facilities. Went into the merchandise shop and bought myself a cap.
I'll get your thoughts on that in a moment, actually, because I haven't had a look at that just yet. But I intend to have a little look.
Oh, you should go down and have a look. It's really nice what they've done with what used to be the old Carlton cafes, all been renovated. That whole corridor from the entrance to the ground. It's all very impressive. Very, very nicely done with the Premiership Cups all on display and all of the players' names listed down under each box. It's really, really quite impressive.
Yeah,
anyone who hasn't been to Icon Park to have a look, check it out next time you get down there. Anyway, so there's my predictions. Beachy, my head tells me Geelong and Collingwood. My heart tells me Brisbane and Sydney, and I hope my heart's right.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't think it will be.
It's funny, actually, because I've just seen a comment here, and it's one I agree with. I think it's going to be a Geelong versus Sydney grand final.
Well, it could be. They're the two teams that have had the week's rest each.
Yeah, exactly. But, it's
that's the logical thing. That's the logical person's viewpoint. Yeah.
It's a funny thing when you've had a week off and you've played in a prelim. That said, there's a running joke that's lasted at least 10 years, Vince, at this point, I can recall. There are three things that are certain in life of a Collingwood supporter, and they are the following: death, taxes, and playing the Swans at the SCG in Sydney throughout the season. Now, I only mention this because they have not played a game against the Swans in Melbourne for 10 years. And now I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty sure that the Collingwood fans are going to be sick of that. So, that said, I'm not discounting Collingwood at all. We know how well Collingwood travel. We know how well Collingwood have played this season. And I'm like you. My heart is telling me that the black and white tsunami gets broken this week. However, the head is telling me that Collingwood will piss me off again because they have found ways to keep themselves in it all game, and then when the chips are down and they are against the wall, they become more aggressive and they start to play more aggressively.
Yep.
So I'm going to say Sydney, but it's by 3 points.
Okay. I hope you're right. All righty. Anyone else got a prediction? Let us know what you think.
Yeah, Rash just chimed in here, says it's
I hope it's a grand final.
Between Pies and Cats, and the Pies lose by a point. Oh,
Dear
Jesus.
me. Well, I'll tell you
Jesus,
what. Imagine if Brisbane pulled off a victory against Geelong and they had to play Collingwood in the grand final. That'd be like the Battle of Smith Street, wouldn't it? Because you got the old Lions being Fitzroy. Of course, Brisbane Lions swallowed up Fitzroy, 27 years ago, roughly?
96, yeah.
26 years ago.
Right.
And, and Collingwood, of course, on the other side of Smith Street. So it'd be the Battle of Smith Street, wouldn't it? If those two teams played off.
And it's, if we're talking traditional terms, it's Collingwood versus South Melbourne. Before the Swans were relocated to Sydney. So
yes,
that
indeed.
keeps it interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see what happens this time next week. We will know who is going to be playing off in the AFL Grand Final for 2022. Should be something to really look forward to. All right, Beachy, let's quickly touch on the VFL, shall we?
Yeah.
Where the two teams have been determined as to who's going to be playing off in the grand final. Yesterday, the Melbourne VFL team, known as the Casey Demons, who play out that way, out at Casey, the city of Casey, of course, encompassing Berwick and places like that. That's where their home ground is, Casey Fields.
Yep.
They had a dominant win over the Brisbane Lions reserves, 99-48. So they're off into the grand final, as they should be. I think they won all but one game during the home and away season. And the team that they'll be playing... Sorry.
That's right. I was just going to say that side that they lost to was who they just beat in the prelim. So
that's right.
That's made things
home ground advantage this time. Yep. Yes, and today the opponent that they'll be playing in the VFL Grand Final, which I assume is next week, is it going to be next Sunday, or is it the Sunday after?
No, it's the 18th. It'll be the 18th.
It is the 18th. Okay, so next Sunday will be the VFL Grand Final between the Casey Demons and the Southport Sharks. Of course, based up there on the Gold Coast, Southport. What a great story this is. Southport making a grand final in the VFL. Beating the Gold Coast Suns reserves team today, 109-81. They should have won by more. Have a look at this for scoring shot differential. 14 goals, 25. This is what they kicked. 14-25. 109 to Gold Coast, who were incredibly accurate. 13 goals, 3. So you got one team with 39 scoring shots, the other one 16. 39-16. And yet the game was in the balance with about 10 minutes to go. Did you know that? The game was literally in the balance with about 10 minutes to go. Don't get me wrong. Southport had the benefit of what must have been a pretty strong breeze in the last quarter. But, the scores were essentially level at three-quarter time. And with half of the last quarter to go, the margin was still less than 10 points. So could have gone either way, but in the end they pulled away and won comfortably in the end by 28 points. But, they kicked the last 3 goals to basically put Gold Coast to the sword. But they'll be a formidable opponent for the Casey Demons next Sunday, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. And I'm just looking.
Should be an exciting grand final. And by the way, where is that being played? Is that being played at Icon Park?
I believe it's going to be Icon Park, yeah.
I thought so. Yeah, I thought it might be, yeah. Be a good game to go out and if you've got nothing better to do next Sunday. Go out and have a look at that.
Yeah, that's a tempting opportunity considering who we'll talk about later. AFLW side will be playing in Fremantle next week against the Dockers. So
yep.
Yeah, like I said, we'll touch on that shortly. So
all right. So that's the VFL scenario. Carlton, of course, went out in the semi-final week, losing to Brisbane when we played them up there in Queensland. But anyway, so that officially makes us, I think, 5th or 6th on the ladder for the season.
Exactly.
AFLW, big round of matches this week. We saw the Western Bulldogs beat Fremantle by 3 points. Very unusual to see Fremantle winless after 3 rounds. They're normally a side that is right up there. Adelaide, last year's premiers, winning a good game against North Melbourne, 30-16. At the SCG, the one of the 4 new teams, Sydney, found GWS a bit too hot to handle. 65-18, the GWS won by. Geelong had a really close encounter, a very low scoring one. They lost to Collingwood 11-15, only 4-point margin to the Magpies. At the Gabba, a vastly different story. Brisbane beating Gold Coast in the Q Clash, 82-9, Beachy.
That's a flogging.
That is a flogging. Today, at RSEA Park in Moorabbin, the St Kilda Saints, in a very unusual game, which I happened to watch this game this afternoon, they conceded the first 6 goals of the game. 6 goals straight to the Melbourne Demons to 0 in the first quarter. At one stage, it was 36-0. From that point on, Melbourne did not kick a goal for the rest of the game. They kicked 10 consecutive behinds to finish the match with 6 goals, 10-46. Can you believe that? And the St Kilda Saints, after a scoreless first quarter, kicked 1 goal, 1 in the second, 1 goal straight in the third, and 1 goal, 1 in the fourth. So they still went down, but they held Melbourne goalless, and they themselves kicked 3 goals after conceding the first 6. A very strange game of football.
That can happen.
Anyway, Melbourne are a class outfit there. They comfortably won the game by 26 points. At the Swinburne Centre, Richmond 44 to Hawthorn 9. Hawthorn, one of the new teams in the competition, still learning the caper. Richmond were dominant today, 35 points. And another flogging, this time by one of the new teams, Essendon. 84, scooping the pool in terms of highest scoring team for the round. Essendon 84 to West Coast 32. A big win by 52 points. And that rockets Essendon up to 6th position on the ladder and tips Carlton out, because what happened to Carlton and Port Adelaide today at Icon Park?
It was a draw.
We played a draw. 4 goals, 3, 27 apiece by the end of the match. Carlton kicks the first 2 goals of the game in the first quarter. Then in the second quarter, we're held scoreless. And Port Adelaide has the only quarter in which they kicked any goals, but they kicked 4 of them. In fact, they kicked 4 goals, 1 in that quarter. In the third quarter, they only kicked a point, and in the last quarter, they were held scoreless, but they still did well enough to get a draw out of it.
Yep.
Unbelievable, hey?
That's right.
Carlton only kicked the 1 goal in the third and only the 1 goal in the last, and couldn't quite get the additional. Even a point would have just got us over the line. In fact, there were some passages of play there towards the end where I think I remember one where Darcy Vecchio had the ball and was, clear, easily clear, and should have made more out of the opportunity. And unfortunately, she went for a hand pass that bounced the wrong way and, coughed up the ball again. So she really stuffed that up a bit, but could have been a different story. But anyway, we get a draw out of it. What did you make of that, Beachy? I mean, do you celebrate that, or do you say, oh, well, we escaped? Or do you say, oh, we stuffed it up, we should have got 4 points?
Well, at this point, Vince, I'm watching the game at Sydney Airport on my phone because I was supposed to be on a plane heading back to Melbourne at 11 o'clock. That plane got cancelled, and I was pushed onto a flight at 3 o'clock. So I had time to watch it, and I watched it, and I was right in everything from it because Bessio, you're right. Bessio was in the clear, and they had a free player running toward the goal square. They could have gone for the kick there for her to kick into an open goal. Instead, she tries to do the unselfish thing, bring another teammate in who I think might have been Guerin. I might have that wrong. I know she went down with an injury earlier in the game, but that's different. They went for a handball and got an unkind bounce, and it's unfortunately ended up in a draw. The first one that we've been involved in since season 1 against the Brisbane Lions, where we had to come in from behind to try and steal that from them.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, I think it's a bit of both. We got away with it, but we got out of jail free because Port Adelaide had very ample opportunity to try and steal it off us. Yet, as someone that's watched Port Adelaide twice already, they've run out of legs in their first few games. They did that against West Coast in Perth, and they did it against the Dogs as well out at Alberton. So it's a get out of jail free card, and you could say we've got an easy-ish game next week against the Dockers, even though we cannot take them lightly.
I wouldn't count that as an easy game at all, to be honest. I think they'll be smarting from that first start. Well, the first 3 games, they're a better team. They're a better team than that.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say they have been a good side for as long as they have, and they're going to be very disappointed with how they've started.
And we'll be playing them on their home ground in Perth next Saturday, I think.
Yeah. We've got to go out to Fremantle Oval in Freo, practically the true home of the Fremantle Football Club. But look, I think we did get away with one today, but yeah, we've got to be on our guard for the next one, Vince. There's no doubt about it.
Well, as it turns out, it leaves us with 1 win and 1 draw after 3 games. Look, if you look at it on the bright side, we've outscored the opposition in the last 2 weeks by a total of 1 point, and we've earned 6 points out of it on the ladder. We're beating Essendon by 1 point last week and having a draw this week. So we could easily have, just got that extra point today. I think Carlton would be ruining today's result. I think Port Adelaide would probably be relieved in the end that they held on for a draw, because it looked for all money that Carlton were going to, surge forward and get that extra score. It looked likely at that point when Bessio had the ball, but I think they escaped with a draw, whereas we would be thinking we should have done more to win the game and we should have got over the line. That's how I look at it. Anyway, how the draw ends up shaping the ladder by the end of the season, we won't know until, I guess, that last round. Looking at next week's games, you've got North Melbourne playing Geelong next Friday night in Tassie at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, followed by a range of games on the Saturday, most of them being played before that final in Sydney. So maybe that's one of the reasons why the final in Sydney was scheduled for 4:45, Beachy. Because when you look at the games, you've got GWS playing West Coast at Giant Stadium in Sydney at 11:10 a.m. Then you've got Gold Coast playing St Kilda at the Great Barrier Reef Arena, and that's in Cairns, I believe.
It's Mackay, actually.
Or is it Mackay, is it?
It's Mackay.
Well, there you go. It's in Mackay. It's still
Cairns
up in North Queensland.
Stadium. And sorry, but Cairns is Cairns Stadium, which is where the cricket is taking place at the moment.
Right. So they're playing up in far North Queensland there at 12:05 p.m. Then you've got Port Adelaide versus the Sydney Swans. So one of these two teams is going to have a win, you would think, unless they have another draw. At 1:10 p.m. This is at Port Adelaide's home ground at Alberton Oval in Adelaide.
Yep.
Then you've got the game between Fremantle and Carlton at 2:05 p.m. on Fremantle Oval. I don't think that's going to be an easy game at all for Carlton. I think we're going to be flat out beating them, to be honest. Then you've got Box Hill, the final one. Box Hill City Oval hosting Hawthorn versus Western Bulldogs at 3:10 p.m. So I assume, therefore, that game will probably be over, if not right on 4:45 when Sydney and Collingwood start their final. It'll be well into the last quarter. Then, of course, we've got 3 games on the Sunday. One at Victoria Park between Collingwood and the Adelaide Crows, last year's premiers. So that'll be a huge game for Collingwood. They've started the season undefeated. That'll be a big game. Then you've got Essendon versus Richmond. That'll be another great game at ETU Stadium in Port Melbourne at 2:10 p.m. That should be a really good game. Is that going to be like a Dreamtime at the G type scenario?
They are billing that as a Dreamtime game. Yes.
Okay.
I was at the Carlton Essendon game in Port Melbourne, and I did hear the words Dreamtime for the next home game between Essendon and Richmond.
Okay. Well, then you've got another battle of 2 undefeated teams to finish off the round at Casey Fields, with Melbourne hosting the Brisbane Lions. Both teams undefeated after 3 rounds. So that'll be a big game to finish off the round at 4:10 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. So Carlton at the moment is in 9th position, just outside the top 8, on 1 win and 1 draw after 3 rounds, only 6 points. Our percentage is pretty lousy, 81.9. But when you assess the points for and against, there's only 17 points there that we have to win by to get that percentage back up to 100.
Yep.
So, look, we're in and around the 8. I dare say that we'll probably threaten to make the 8 at certain stages this year, but I can't see us doing it. I just don't think we've got the playing group anymore. It was amazing today seeing how many players are playing for opposition clubs. Grace Egan has gone to Richmond. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, she went to Richmond. She's joined the Hoskin twins there. Yeah. We've already touched on this earlier, but Madison Press-Parkis and Georgia G.
Both at Essendon.
Yep, they've gone to Essendon. Taylor Harris is at Melbourne.
But even Charlotte Wilson's gone to St Kilda.
Bianca Jacobson, who was an original Blue with us, she's at another club. Tilly Lucas Rod, another original, is now at Hawthorn.
There's a lot of players who have left, mate.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent.
My goodness, we've lost so many players. Anyway, I thought today the best player for Carlton was Laloifi at fullback, personally. I thought she did a fantastic job at fullback today. What do you think?
She even went forward and kicked a goal, actually, which was a nice touch by her. Who did I think? That is a great question.
She didn't kick a goal. She kicked a point.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, in any event, she tried to go forward. So she tried to make something happen. So she tried to make something happen, which is great to see.
Well, good to see both Bree Moody and her fellow player Elise O'Day both playing their 50th games today, both kicking a goal each. But they would have wanted to finish the game as winners, I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty confident of that.
Mm.
You know what, Vince? You make a good point on Laloifi, but there's a father-daughter there that, just looking at the stats, really caught my eye. And she wears the number 5.
Yeah, Abby McCain.
Okay.
She certainly played well.
26 disposals.
Yep. And I thought the captain played pretty well too.
Yes.
She's not Karen Harrington anymore. She's Karen Peterson, isn't she? Yes, she is.
And we usually kind of expect that from our captain, always leading from the front.
Yep.
Then again, Mimi Hill number 10. She got 11 touches and was
Yeah.
quite handy around the contest.
Yeah.
Lucy McAvoy, number 13.
Yeah, she's always pretty steady.
Yep.
In defence.
Bria
Yeah, she
Mooney,
plays well.
touched on.
I thought
Bria
young
Mooney,
number 4, the young Skepper, the girl that took on Madison Prasparkas' number, I thought she played pretty well, Skepper. Number 4.
She's definitely caught my eye. I watched her out at Port Melbourne when we played Essendon. She had a very good game, and I think she's one that we should be keeping an eye on very closely.
Yeah,
as Carlton supporters.
Well, look, I gave it to Lola Weefy as our best. I thought just the job she did in defence was masterful. And I gave McKay, our second best player, 2 votes. And I gave the captain, Peterson, my 3rd vote. She also kicked the goal, apart from getting 21 possessions. Very dependable. And a big mention, even though she only got 6 possessions, she kicked the goal, but she laid 10 tackles. And that was Delpos, the former GWS player.
Yes.
She just tackles. She's a tackling machine. So I thought she was worth a mention as well, although I didn't put her in my votes. Mimi Hill, not a bad game, but I've seen her play a lot better and have a lot more impact than what she had today. Yeah, McAvoy and O'Day had reasonable games, but a lot of the others were very quiet. Look, Darcy Vecchio, 4 kicks, 3 hand passes, only kicked a point. Had the chance to really win the game for us in that last couple of minutes and failed to do so. I just think she needs to do more. Got to have a good hard look at herself. Anyway, for someone so experienced, you'd expect to get more output than that. But anyway, I'm sure they're all trying their hardest.
They are.
Next week, we'll sort them out. They've got to go to Perth and play Fremantle on their home ground. That'll really tell us a lot about whether Carlton's going to be a contender this year or whether they're going to be just one of the pack that misses out.
Yep, and if we look at just quickly the next 3 games ahead, so we've got Fremantle over there. That's Saturday, as you mentioned.
Then we have a home game.
Yes, we do.
The week after?
Yes, we do. We play the Demons.
And that, by the way, is on the public holiday, Friday, the 23rd of September. There's a whole host of games, starting with one at the Swinburne Centre between the Bulldogs and North Melbourne at 12:40 p.m. on that public holiday Friday here in Victoria.
That's correct.
There's also a game between Collingwood and Essendon at the AIA Centre in Olympic Boulevard, which is basically, the Collingwood home ground there.
Yeah,
and then you've got Sydney playing Hawthorn at 5:10 p.m. Also at the Swinburne Centre, and that's here in Melbourne, even though it's a Sydney Swans home game.
Yes, it is.
And then you've got the Carlton-Melbourne game at 7:30 p.m., which is the night game. This is all on grand final eve. So there's going to be a real plethora of women's games, four of them, in fact, on that grand final eve. We've also got a couple of games on the Thursday night, which is, by the way, the Thursday, the 22nd, has now been declared a public holiday by the Prime Minister.
Yep.
As a day of mourning for as a day of mourning for the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. So those 2 games there, one at Geelong against St Kilda at 7:00, and the other one's over in the west between West Coast Eagles and Fremantle in the Western Derby. That's at 9:00 on the eastern states, 7:00 over there in Perth. So that's going to be another good couple of games on the day before. So that's also on a public holiday. Yeah. And can you believe it? On the Saturday of the grand final, we have an AFLW match being scheduled.
Yes, we do. It's
I can't believe it. Are these people serious?
Versus Brisbane.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that on grand final day? And by the way, this is over at Punt Road, basically.
It is.
Which is next door to the MCG. Well, what do you think of this idea? Do you think this is the AFL's way of putting on a what do they call it? A curtain raiser I mean, we used to have under-19s grand finals and reserves grand finals back in the day. Do you remember those, Beachy, or not?
Not no. I think just as I was born, I think they stopped doing it. But look, I can understand why they've done it because years gone by, they've actually had a thing what's called the longest kick. For those that don't know, this is
but they do that on the Yarra at bloody 10 o'clock in the morning or something, don't they? Straight after the North Melbourne Grand Final breakfast is over at the Exhibition and Convention Centre. That's normally between 8 in the morning and 10.
Yeah, but I'm getting around to my point here, Vince, because then what I'm thinking is that the AFL are realising there's going to be people out and about as it is.
They want some entertainment.
So let's try and keep people in and around the area. So what have they done? They've decided to put an AFLW game on between Richmond and Brisbane to see if they can get people in, give people an incentive. Yeah, to try and stay in. So
fair enough. Fair enough.
I reckon that's not a bad idea. I mean, this is the first time they've done it, so we don't know if it's going to work yet or not. So let's see how it works out.
Well, let's see how it works out. I thought it was a bit strange to be scheduling a game on Grand Final day, but anyway, if there were other games, I would have had them at the MCG. They're the people that are paying the big money for their ticket to go to the game. Anyway, so then we have two more games on the Sunday. So that one as I said, on Grand Final day, Richmond versus the Brisbane Lions at 11:10 a.m. Then on the Sunday, you've got Gold Coast versus Port Adelaide at 1:10 p.m. This is the day after the Grand Final. So this is at a place called Combermere Park. Where's that?
I'm glad
I can only imagine it'd be somewhere in Queensland. Gold Coast versus Port Adelaide.
Because I'm looking it up as we speak. It is the home to the Broad Beach Cats Football Club. So it's Broad
on the Gold
Beach.
Coast. Right.
Mermaid Waters is the suburb, commercially known as Subaru Oval. So,
well, these two teams once played in China, so I was wondering whether it might have been a place in China.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll take an AFLW game to China somehow.
No, they won't. But
they'll
anyway,
probably if they entered the country, they'd probably never get them back. The other one is, of course, Adelaide versus GWS at Unley Oval in Adelaide at 3:10 p.m. So, some big games coming up. Carlton, I'll tell you what, Fremantle next week, Melbourne the week after, and then the week after that is GWS over in New South Wales, wherever Henson Park is in Marrickville.
That's yes.
Yep. So they're a strong side too, not to be messed with. They're they're no pushover.
No, that's right.
All right, I think we've done AFLW to death.
Yep.
The only thing I'll say now about this is, good evening to Lana Owens. Nice to see you joining us for the evening. I was wondering where she was.
And she predicts hopefully Lions Sydney GF.
In Sydney. Yes, that's what I'm hoping for, Lana. But I'd say Geelong Collingwood looks like the most likely result. If not, maybe Geelong Sydney.
Well, sorry, but
now we noticed.
Go on. So before you go on to what I think you're about to go on, Rush actually asked a pretty good question, which I just want to touch on quickly.
Well, we want
thoughts
participation.
Stocker.
Yes, well, we noticed that Liam Stocker was reportedly having discussions with Essendon during the week. He was delisted a week ago. Came as a big surprise to me, but the more I have discussions with people, the more I can sort of see why they may have let him go. I just think that they've tried him in defence. It hasn't quite worked out. Disposal efficiency isn't up to scratch, according to some. Pace is lacking. and maybe just overall condition. Maybe his overall fitness is not up to it, and he doesn't seem to have the tank or the engine, as people describe it these days, to play midfield. So he was recruited as a midfielder, but we've never played him there. So mustn't be up to scratch. I mean, even in games like that last one against Collingwood, where we had Walsh out, we had Kennedy out, and we had Hewitt out, 3 of our best 5. So we only had Cripps and Chera playing in the midfield from the top, I guess, our best 5 midfielders. He didn't even get a gig in the midfield then. So they ended up playing Doherty in there and 1 or 2 others. So Setterfield, etc. So I don't know. I just think they just don't see a future with him. So they've let him go. I think there might be some other issues with Liam Stocker as well from a personal point of view. I'm sort of picking up bits and pieces of information that maybe he's struggled to fit in with the rest of the team in some ways.
I've heard that too.
You know, I remember, was it a year ago or 2 years ago? I can't remember when it was, but remember when he kicked his first goal in AFL football? I can't remember who it was against, but when he kicked that first goal in AFL football, none of the boys went up to him. None of the boys went up to him and congratulated him the way they normally do.
I know what you mean.
I wondered even then whether that might be an indication of whether this guy's fitting in with the rest of the team or not.
It might have been against Collingwood, I think. Maybe.
Not sure.
I'm not sure. Anyway. Thank you for that question.
I think at the end of the day, Rash, to answer your question, I wish him all the best. I hope he gets another opportunity with another club, even if it is Essendon or Collingwood or any of our traditional rivals. I hope he does okay because he's a talented player who deserves another opportunity. All right. I'd just like to also mention before I forget, and I certainly don't want to forget, we had some sad news during the week from Carlton fans' point of view. Of course, apart from the very sad passing of Her Majesty the Queen last week, we also, from a Carlton perspective, had the sad news in the last 48 hours of the passing of a premiership player with Carlton back in the early 80s. He was part of the 81-82 back-to-back premiership sides. Played 30 games for Carlton, and of course I speak of Mario Bordelotto, number 6. A much-loved past player. He always turns up to the past player functions, always turned up to the reunions. He was at the reunion of the 81-82 premiership side only a few weeks ago, about a month ago I think it might have been now. So, very sad to hear of his passing. Only 65, so you would have thought he had a bit of time to go yet. But you just can't take anything for granted, can you, Beachy?
65, bloody hell!
Born 1957. Only just recently, maybe 3 months ago, I think, had his 65th birthday. So, no, too young in today's day and age to be.
That is way too young. That's way too young.
So this signifies the first player that we've lost from those premierships. And that's 40 years on. So, he was 25 at the time of the 81, or 24 and 25 when we won in 81 and 82. So, rest in peace, Mario Bordelotto. I knew Mario. I'd spoken with him at the reunion and, lovely bloke. And David Parkin always sings his praises too.
I'm glad to hear that.
Played a very important role on David Cloak in the 1982 grand final, a very important role. And he kept him pretty quiet for most of that match.
Yep. Of course, we wish his family that are still with us all the
condolences to all of Mario's family and closest friends for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure not many of us would have known Mario personally, like yourself, Vince, or anybody else, like his mates around the club or his premiership teammates or David Parkin, as you said. But, we all wish him our best and hope that they're going okay through this tough time.
Conversely, on the other side of the fence, we look at birthdays, and I've got 2 birthdays that I'd like to mention tonight. Today is September 11, which happens to be the 21st anniversary, by the way, of that tragic terrorist attack back in New York in 2001. But apart from that, it's also the birthday of the great Bruce Doull today, 72 years of age, Dooley, and he's still fighting fit from what I hear, and still doing well. So what a great player he was. And, you know, it's half his life ago. So he's turned 72 today, Beachy. When he was 36, on grand final day, he hung up the boots. 1986, in a losing grand final against Hawthorn. He played his last game. Fantastic career. 356 sensational games for Carlton. Who could ever forget the flying doormat? What a player he was.
Of course. And, you know, look, obviously, Vince, I'm a bit young for that, obviously, but, you know, I've seen highlights, I've seen footage, I've seen the master at his work, saying that, look, I didn't get to see it like you guys live, but I've seen the history, I've seen the success he's brought to the club. People like myself, maybe even a bit younger than me as well, they would have had the same thing just go right through.
Well, look, you know, he played, probably close to 30 finals, I reckon. And he played in numerous grand finals, including 72, 79, 81, and 82. So he won those 4 premierships, multiple best and fairest winner, sensational clubman. I mean, look, if you're ranking Carlton's players in its entire history, in order of, team players, he'd be number 1. And he always did his job. He was so widely respected. Every player in the side had a lot of time for Bruce Doull and the way he went about his business. He used to go to training in the full kit, Beachy. He had the full jumper, shorts, boots, socks, the whole lot. He just trained like he was playing. And that's how seriously he took it. And fantastic example that he set for the rest of the team. But just the most reliable defender you could ever wish to play with in your team. And so many players that have played for Carlton say that. The most reliable player that you could stand tall next to. Yep. The great Bruce Doull. So anyway, happy birthday, Brucey, 72 today. And guess who turns 80 tomorrow, Beachy? I'll give you a clue. We've already mentioned his name. Or you have. And I have as well.
Shit.
I'll give you a clue. He was the coach of the 20th century and coached Carlton in 3 premierships. The great David Parkin. That's right. Fantastic achievement from Parko to reach that milestone. I recently did an interview with him for the Jumper Punch with Rocco, and he's still looking pretty good for someone who's just about to click over 80. And
I was just going to say, he doesn't
still passionate. You know, when he talks about Carlton, he talks about playing and certain matches and anything about football. You know, he still talks very passionately, and it's great to see.
That's great to that's great to hear, mate. Because he doesn't look 80 for sure. Now, I've just got a question that's actually been brought up by Peter Vlahos.
Yes.
Have it here, mate.
Will the Jumper Punch interview Bruce Doull? Well, Peter Vlahos, I can assure you that next year, it won't be this season, but next year, you'll have noticed that this year, the Jumper Punch has had a player that we've interviewed after each episode. So, for example, we've had, I think we started the year with episode number 26 because the previous year they had 25 episodes. So we decided this year that we would start at number 26 and we'd go with a player who played in that Guernsey number. So the first episode for this year, we had David Rees-Jones and we interviewed him for number 26. Then we had Dennis Armfield at 27 and Spiro Korkamilis at 28 and et cetera, et cetera. I could go right through them if you want. But we've gone right through to the 50s, in fact, already, which there are really no players to speak of around the 50s. But we're going to finish it up there. But next year, we're going to start at 25 and go back to number 1. So the first episode next year, we'll get someone who wore number 25, and then 24, 23, all the way down to the last episode will be a player who wore number 1. So we'll go back in reverse order. So when it comes time for number 11, we'll have to just wait and see if we can get the mighty Bruce Dill. You never know, Peter. You never know your luck. We'll certainly we'll leave no stone unturned. I'm not sure how long the interview would go for. It'll probably last for about 3 minutes. In fact, that might even be too much to ask. But anyway,
still good.
We'll certainly do what we can. So next point we should make, Beachy, after the birthday, the 80th birthday of David Parkin, and we wish him all the best for tomorrow. I just wanted to make mention of something that happened over this weekend that really fired me right up. Of course, as we saw the sad passing of Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II during the week. Now, the AFL had made a decision to honour the Queen with a minute's silence before every one of the games this weekend, both the 2 semi-finals in the AFL men's competition, as well as the VFL competition and the AFLW competition.
Yep, go right ahead.
And
I completely agree with it.
Then they backflipped on plans to honour the Queen with that minute's silence before all of the women's games. They did it on the Friday night with the Western Bulldogs in Collingwood, and then apparently the Dogs or someone from the Bulldogs complained and said it was inappropriate. They said it was insensitive, and they supported the league's eventual decision to abandon the ceremony for the remaining 8 games. Now, why? Why can't we honour somebody who has been the head of state in this entire country for the last 70 years, probably a reign that we will never, ever see again? Well, certainly not in our lifetimes, but even in future generations, we'll probably never see a queen or king ever hold reign for that long again. Now,
it won't happen again in my
lifetime. I cannot believe. I was waiting for something like this to see if it was going to happen, because everyone from all walks of life, from both sides of politics, the whole lot, have all praised the Queen and how she handles herself, how she's always handled herself with dignity and grace, always served her country and served the countries of the Commonwealth, has come out to Australia, God knows how many times during those 70 years. And honestly, if we can't honour somebody upon their death, what is wrong with this country? Why should it offend anybody because we want to honour the Queen after she's passed? It is ridiculous. I mean, apparently Bulldogs director Belinda Duarte, or Duarte, is it? I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but Duarte
I don't even know who
said the minute's silence, quote, imposed a reflection on the impact of the Queen's life and reign and unearthed deep wounds. Really? The minute's silence unearths deep wounds because you're honouring someone who's passed away, who's an icon in history. While for many Australians it's seen as appropriate to recognise the significance of the Queen's passing, we must understand what this brings up for First Peoples, the impact of colonisation and what the monarchy represents to us and our families.
I knew it.
Now, this woman's speaking for everyone, is she? So because she says it, all of a sudden this is the case for everybody? Let me tell you, many Indigenous people disagree with her. including there's an Indigenous elder by the name of Ian Hunter who thought that decision was wrong. He said it is totally disrespectful to our country, who was a part of the British colony. Disrespectful, that's what I'd say. Hunter told the Herald Sun. Herald Sun columnist Rita Panahi described the move as absolutely pathetic, while Darren Hinch said it was an absolute insult to their sport, that they did not observe the minute's silence. Even Indigenous people are saying that minute's silence should have been observed. Just because one Bulldogs director happens to say that it's offensive to Indigenous people speaking on everyone's behalf, what, all of a sudden the AFL just jumps at shadows and jumps at ghosts and withdraws it? It is pathetic. It is weak as piss. And it just goes to show you how pathetically woke this competition has become, right? By all means, have your Indigenous rounds and, change the names. I mean, they've changed the name of Melbourne to Naarm. They've even after every goal today in that St Kilda Melbourne game, every goal that was scored came with music, Aboriginal music. I mean, how far are we going to take this? But now we want to respect the Queen of the country, the head of state, who's just passed away at the age of 96, a widely loved person throughout the world. And these people think it's offensive? They are a disgrace, these people. I have got no time for any of them. And anyone who supports that decision not to have the minute's silence, right, or to hang their heads in shame. It's a disgrace. Anyway, what do you think out there? Do you agree with me or you disagree with me? I don't care. By all means, let us know what you think. I thought it was so disrespectful of the AFL not to have that minute's silence before the women's games on Saturday and Sunday. Absolute disgrace.
Okay. So,
typical Gillan McLaughlin, weak as piss. Piss off now. Go and do your retirement on your $2 million salary.
Okay.
So, sick of him.
Yeah, okay. While we let Vince calm down for a sec, let's go through some comments here. And let's just cut to the chase here, okay?
Yep.
You are getting complete agreement here from everybody. She completed 16 tours out here. Belinda Twat, more like, always bound among the minority these days. Peter Vlahos thinks that
banana of the week
should be banana.
Well, I hope Rocco's watching the show right now, and he's going to give her the banana of the week as well. Because, honestly, it's just I can't believe it. I just cannot believe it.
Yeah, I know.
I'm speechless after learning of this. I thought you have got to be kidding. And we become that woke that we're not going to respect the head of state after she passes away at the age of 96. I mean, honestly.
And as I said to you off air,
I'll tell you one person that'll be supporting Belinda Duarte, and it's that stupid moron that's over in the Senate, in the federal Senate, Lydia Thorpe. From the Greens Party. She'll be another one that'll be supporting that move because of the colonisation issue. Oh, makes you sick.
Oh, don't. Okay, Vince, please do me a favour. Don't mention her because then you'll set me off.
Well,
you'll set me off.
She's another one that's a disgrace in the Australian Parliament. How she could have got into the Senate is just goes to highlight how stuffed our political system is. When you got an absolute moron like that representing us in the Senate.
I know. And it's, I said, Vince, I agree. But that's basically what I'm going to say. I agree. The fact that we're not allowing anyone to just pay even our respects to someone that's been our queen for 7 decades is disrespectful. It's almost high treason, if you want to call it that. Look, that's all I'm going to say about it. Now, I'm going to say one thing. Actually, I've got a couple of things to say. And Vince, you thank you for bringing this up as well, because
Sure.
you actually brought this to our attention.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Bazzasto,
Yep.
he has got himself some money back, thanks to what I've heard from you,
Yep.
and because of a certain individual that has tried to rip him off. Hopefully, he gets himself into trouble for that, because that is just a low act. It is disrespectful to a legend of our club, not just a legend of the game. And he is, as far as I'm concerned, he would be public enemy number one in WA if he was even brave enough to even step into that state, because that is just disrespectful to him. To Bazzasto, I should say. It's disrespectful to his family, who I am sure you are very close with at this current time, and pretty much a piss off to anyone and a thumb into the system, because all he thinks about is himself. That is just disgusting. He should be locked up in jail for that. So,
Well,
now
I can tell you, Beachy, if you want me to tell you what I know at this stage.
Yep.
There was an initial payment made a couple of weeks ago now, which did go through to the tune of $30,000 that Bazzastos were paid. That was an amount that they said that they would be happy with when there was a discussion between both sides. Bazzastos, in fact, informed me that they'd been paid. The reason they informed me is because I actually hosted the function, and they were, I guess, informing me of what was going on, because as someone who was involved in the function as a host and as an auctioneer, I'm probably going to be interviewed as a witness by the police now, because apparently there has been an investigation that has opened up. The fraud squad are investigating on a number of issues to do with the function, whether it was properly permitted via the authorities. Apparently there were checks that had bounced, which is a fraudulent act. And whether any financial advantage had been gained by deception is another issue. Of course, that sort of offence would be a criminal offence if it was proven. So, look, I don't want to say a lot other than that Bazzastos have received an amount of money that they said that they would be happy with. The reason it is still an ongoing investigation is because apparently there is a question mark over whether, in fact, more funds had been raised than what had been paid over, and they're investigating that now. And so eventually they'll get down to the bottom of it, and hopefully it can all be sorted out and justice can be done, and everyone can get on with their lives again. I just think it's a very sad situation, to be honest, because I thought that there was a lot of goodwill attached to this function, a lot of people that contributed their hard-earned money towards the cause, felt cheated out of their generosity. So let's just hope that it can all be wrapped up very soon, and everyone can get on with their lives again.
Yep.
Why money wasn't handed over within an acceptable amount of time? At the time, I even told the organiser that he should hand it over within a week at the latest, and unfortunately that wasn't done. So why that's the case, I'm not really sure. I'm sure the police will find out.
Yep, I'm sure they will find out. And one more thing I want to discuss before we wrap up, because we have been going for quite a while. But there's a lot that can happen in a week. It was my understanding that the AFL wrapped up its investigation into the racism reports for Adam Sard against the Adelaide Crows.
All right.
They came to the conclusion that there were conflicting reports from both parties, and they decided that there was no need for this matter to go any further. So, ladies and gentlemen of the AFL, I doubt.
So it's a case of he said, she said. No one can prove anything either way. There's no tape recordings or video of the incident, so therefore it's one person's word against another, basically.
That is correct. So, ladies and gentlemen of the AFL, Vince, you said it yourself. Sometimes if you go woke, you go broke. And if you're not going to take something as serious as racism seriously in a sporting organization, where, by the way, Adam Sard was called a terrorist by a female Adelaide Crows member. Right now, our cheer squad pointed this out to security at the Adelaide Oval.
Yeah.
She was taken by Adelaide Oval security. SA police were involved and stadium management were involved as well. And she was allowed to return to her seat. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if this was one of us, right, saying this as a Carlton supporter or whoever, right, we would be escorted out immediately, prosecuted, and possibly banned for an extended period, might be even for life. You cannot, under any circumstances, resort to something like that, because then you get yourself in positions you do not want to get caught in, and that's exactly what happened to this you know what. And yet she was able to return to her seat like nothing happened. It is a disgrace, and something should have been done to stop this, yet nothing happened. I hope you're happy with yourself now, SA, because this shouldn't be happening either way. It doesn't matter if you're a Crows fan, Power fan, Carlton fan, or anybody that supports an AFL club. You do not, and you should not resort to racism, because that is disgusting, and society should not be putting up with this anymore. We're not in the 1850s. We're into the 2020s. People need to grow up and get over themselves.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in this case, Beachy, it appears that there's a lack of evidence, and the person's denials have proven to be sufficient to say, well, we can't prove it. And if they can't prove it, they can't take action.
Well, yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay, so Vince is done. You know what, guys? We've been going for a while. Thanks, Vince, for tuning. Thanks, Vince, for joining me to help run your show. I think we're going to end it there this evening, guys. Thanks for tuning in. This is probably one of the longest shows that we've had between Vince and myself. We'll go back to normal programming next week. Steve should be back to help run the show this time, but we will be signing out for now. Good night, guys.